Hi, everyone. As you're coming in the webinar room today, we want to welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Marsha Butler. I'm the webinar director here at Advice Chaser. Before we introduce our guest and get started, I need to do a bit of legal housekeeping. Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. We cannot and do not give financial advice. Today's presentation is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars, such as this one, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, jokes, or principles expressed by presenters are their own, and however true, funny, or interesting, are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on the information you hear today without consulting a qualified financial professional. We're thrilled to bring you today's educational presentation. Attendees are muted, but we do encourage you to ask questions using the chat box. And I have turned it on so that you can talk with us, but if you put a question in the chat box, you may not see anything else. That's because we've turned off communication between attendees. If you ask a question in the chat box and we're not able to get to it, go ahead and leave your information that we might contact you and get with you to make sure that question gets addressed. We want this experience to be as educational as possible. So again, please don't hesitate to ask for clarification, ask for expansion of the material. We'll do the best we can to address those today. Well, I'd love to introduce you to our presenter. With over 12 years of industry experience, Brian Boudreau has developed a proven and proprietary process to help his clients efficiently achieve their most important financial goals. This is done by learning about and thoroughly understanding every client's financial concerns, needs, wants, and wishes. Brian has a passion for investing and learning. He earned his BS degree in chemical engineering with a minor in business and economics from the Colorado School of Mines in 2006. After leaving the engineering world, this passion for learning continued in the form of earning the accredited asset management designation in 2013, the Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor designation in 2015, and most recently becoming a certified financial planner professional in 2017. And Brian, I know you and I have prepared for this and we're excited to have people here. And I know that we're going to be a little more conversational on this. And I'm really excited to turn the time over to you and love to learn what you have to say today.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, and thanks to anybody who's watching and attending here live. The purpose of today's conversation is to really talk about how undaunting that meeting with a financial professional can truly be. I think a lot of people out there are interested or maybe at least a little curious as to what seeing a financial planner may look like. And our job here today is to kind of demystify that and make you know that it doesn't take so much time, effort, and energy, that it can be built for each individual, tailored for them, and worked around their schedules. And so one of the things that I've come to appreciate in my life with a family, with hobbies, and with other interests going on is I realize how valuable time truly is. I don't want to spend 100 hours a week working, and I also don't expect my clients to want to spend hours and hours and hours spending time with me. We live chaotic lives. A lot of us are so busy that we're getting pulled in a million different directions. But we also realize that this is an important topic that probably should be a priority. But again, with an uncertain amount of time commitment, it can be difficult. And so I've realized that more often than not, why we invest and why we save and put our money away is that we're trying to eventually use our money to buy our time back. That's what really retirement looks like. And so as you think about the need or desire to want to do financial planning, some of the common reasons you may not want to do it is, I'm too busy. I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm nervous. I don't want to expose that maybe I haven't been doing enough. or, there's some guilt that I know better, but I haven't done it. And so I'm just going to avoid maybe doing it some more. And for a lot of people, they don't even know what the first step is. And it's one of these things that it lingers in your mind. It's in the back cavern somewhere that says, gosh, this is something I really want to address, but I don't even know what to do next.
Brian, I guess for you that these are pretty common sentiments that people are coming to you. And so most financial advisors wouldn't be surprised to learn that that's kind of what's stopping people. Is that what you'd say?
It's so true. I remember when I got out of the field of engineering
Mhm.
that I had an old 401k. I didn't even know what I could do, what I should do. I was young. I had a little money saved up. And so again, the uncertainty or the unknown of what works with a financial professional entails, it can be intimidating. And again, if we take anything away from today, it's probably that it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be intimidating. And when it's all said and done, it should be extremely beneficial to someone to at least carve out a little bit of their day to see if it makes sense for them to work with a professional.
All right. Let's move
Yeah,
on to the reasons why people generally contact someone like you.
more often than not, it's due to a life event. And when I started my career, I had no clients. I had no potential clients. It was through the act of getting to know people, meeting people out at their job or at a social function, and realizing that what ultimately led them to initiating a conversation with me was some life event, some occurrence where money was involved or money was going to be involved, and it was a decision making point in their lives. And so some of the most common ones are getting married, combining finances. This is a topic that just like going through, maybe some premarital couples counseling, it could make sense to go sit down with a financial advisor and say, how do we combine our incomes? How do we make sure that we're both working towards the same goals? Whether one or both spouses work, it still can be a valuable time to sit down with someone and see what may be possible now that you have a joint finances. Having a child, more often than not, we're talking about college planning for once families are started. Grandparents, once they're first time grandparents, they think about how can they help their new grandbaby. And so that's a money emotion event. One of the biggest, scariest moments in most people's working lives is that approaching the finish line of their career and realizing that they're going from having a paycheck pretty consistently, pretty reliably, to no longer that being the case. And so as you get really, really close to retirement, let's say when you're 5 years or less away, you really want to start to think about that big life event and how you're going to get through it. Inheritance. That's another big one where you may not have much money. You may be younger, and this could be just more money than you've ever had and unsure of what to do with it, what you can do with it, what are the tax implications of it. And so getting with professionals can really be an opportunity to sit down with a professional and see what that may look like. And I brought this up earlier, changing jobs. More often than not, I've come across in my careers that folks have had multiple different jobs over a 10, 15, 20 year lifetime of working. And because of the uncertainty or not knowing what's possible, they tend to just leave their old 401k or 403b plan at their old job. And while that's viable, I'd argue that it may not be optimal. And so take that as an opportunity to say, all right, I'm changing jobs. My financial situation is changing. Let me seek out a professional to at least talk to and see if there's something I could do or should do.
It's funny that you said life transitions. I thought about my own situation, what prompted me to meet with my first financial advisor. And it was an impending divorce. And I'm like, things are going to change entirely. I don't have any guidance. I had like a old 401k that I didn't know what to do with. Yeah. So that's funny.
I focused on the positive life events, but there are some others that also would prompt a conversation. Divorce is a very common one, and also losing a spouse. That happens in life where oftentimes my clients are a married couple. One of them tends to be a little more prone to want to have financial conversations, and the other may be more passive. And so if that leader of the family unit, as it relates to finances, is the one that passes away, it can be really, really scary. So both of those are very common life occurrences that could prompt someone to say, now's probably a good time to sit down with someone.
Yeah, and probably just to reiterate, like, you don't necessarily need a life event to make you to have a conversation with a financial advisor. You can do it at any point.
Very fair. Yeah, as folks start to accumulate wealth, whether they've been working on their own or have had someone giving them at least some advice from afar, oftentimes they reach a point in life where they're like, either I don't have the time or the desire to continue to worry about this aspect of my life on my own. It's time to bring in someone that can help.
Okay.
All right. So you've had that life event, or you've had that light bulb moment that says it's time to finally talk to someone. What are some common ways that you can seek out some help? So in a lot of cases, the very best way, in my opinion, is from a referral from someone you trust, whether that's a friend, a family member, a colleague. When you can get some word of mouth referrals from someone that you already have some built-in trust with, that's a great place to start. You're able to leverage that person's experience with their advisor, maybe even ask them a few questions like, how often do you meet? How much do they charge you? What are some of the best parts about working with that person? So you can kind of get a little sense of what it could look like working with someone via the experience someone you know has already gone through. So start there, whether that's your accountant, a friend, family member, seek out the advice of a few people and see if any of them overlap. You know, if you hear the same name once or twice, that may be a good signal that this person may be doing a good job for the people they work for. We live in a great technology age where there's a lot of research you can do online and using different databases. One of the ones that I'm personally a fan of is going to the CFP website. That way you can go and search for qualified professionals that have gone through the additional steps of education to really make sure they can serve all of their clients' needs and address all of their concerns. And they've committed to ongoing education and an ongoing commitment to being a fiduciary for their clients. So CFP website, online searches. And last but not least, let's talk a little bit about Advice Chaser. You came to this webinar today looking for recommendations or a place that you can help find a financial advisor. And that's what Advice Chaser is built to do. They're built to help find people that are in need and sort them and find matches in the financial world that can potentially help that person based on what they're looking for.
All right, let's talk about I'm really excited about this part because we're going to talk about kind of the time commitment and what that entails. So let's get into the numbers here. What's the first step once you've found someone to potentially talk to?
Yes, and this is where we have our process built in our office, and I can't speak for every financial advisor that's out there, but because I personally value time so much, my goal here is to be as efficient as possible and let oftentimes the potential client dictate the length of the meeting. But what we can really make sure we can accomplish is you've done your research, or you've gotten that referral, you've decided to set up that first introductory phone call, and here's what it looks like in our case. And so we're looking for about 30 minutes, and it can sometimes go a little longer if the potential client has a lot of questions or concerns that just can snowball into a slightly lengthier process. But what's important to know is that we're committed to protecting your time in this first meeting, and it's really just a chance to get to know one another on a very high level. My comparison is it's a lot like a first date. You're going to grab a cup of coffee with someone to meet them for the first time. This is not the chance to get to know their entire life story. It's a chance to kind of just have a brief interaction, get to know kind of who they are, how they can help. They get to know who you are, what kind of help you're seeking out, and just see if those personalities are a good fit. It's pretty easy. A lot of people have really, really great instincts and can tell in a very short amount of time if this can potentially work. Most importantly, this is a chance for both sides to decide if there's a chance for it to be a mutually beneficial fit. As much as advisors want to help everybody, they may not be able to. And as much as you may want to hire a financial advisor, the person you're sitting across from or having this first phone call with may also not be the right fit. And so you're, again, trying to protect your time. You can't date everybody. And so you really, once you decide you're going to settle on someone, this is the chance to kind of screen them real high level, real brief.
Okay, so you're saying about 30 minutes. So I could probably do this, at my lunch hour. Maybe I'm eating my sandwich a little faster.
Absolutely. I've had meetings where someone's literally eating their lunch while we're having this conversation, because it really is just we're not talking specifics. We're talking, tell me a little bit about who you are, tell me what you're seeking out, and I can then come back with, well, this is the area that I'm able to most be helpful to my clients. And if that's not a match, it's like, hey, thanks for taking the time, but you may want to look for someone else. And in fact, I have relationships with a lot of good advisors that serve different kind of niches and types of clients that I may not. You can get a referral from the person you're sitting down with if the fit doesn't seem quite right in that first meeting.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
Okay, first date goes well, we're clicking. We say we want to take the next step. So what does that look like? This one's going to take a little bit longer. Typically, we budget 1 hour of time. And again, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. Usually it's because the potential client is seeing and experiencing value in the conversation that they have then made the decision that it's okay to use up a little bit more of their time. But again, we set the expectation very clearly that we've carved out an hour, and we're committed to making sure that we protect your time. So we decide that this is a chance where we're going to start to dig in a little bit more about what's going on specifically in your situation. Was it an inheritance? Was it I'm approaching retirement and I don't know what to do? Was it a job change? And so this is a chance for the advisor to spend a little bit more time asking some questions, kind of a fact-finding mission to figure out where your concern, where your pain point might be for you specifically, instead of just that high-level conversation. As we start to uncover that specific pain point or concern, we can then take that to forming what you're telling us around what your goals or objectives would be, as far as what's the outcome you're looking for based on everything you're telling me. If it's, I don't know if I have enough to be able to retire, perfect. Let's capture a little bit of information about what you have, where it's all at, and really start to build out kind of a structural financial plan. This is a very, very high level, basic, here's where you're at, here's where you're trying to get to, here's the pieces you've told me you had, and I can give you a really quick snapshot and say, it looks like you're well on your way, it looks like it's a little bit dicey, or the bad news, we have some work to do. But at least you're going to walk out of that meeting or over that Zoom call or whatever it may be, and at least have a sense of, I'm doing everything so well, I probably don't need to work with this advisor. Or even if you are doing everything so well, again, it could just be like, I don't want to do this myself anymore. How can you help me? I'm going to pass the ball to you, take over my financial situation, and help me get to that finish line confidently and comfortably. Or again, if there's a shortfall or worse, it's start talking about how can we most affect and help you reach that positive outcome. We'll get a little bit of sense of kind of your investment strategy. A lot of folks I've seen over the years, that first meeting, don't know why they're investing the way they are. They don't know if they should change their investments, if they're actually matching what they've seen. Unfortunately, more often than not, it comes in after a down year. People oftentimes seek out more help with their investment strategy when things aren't going so well, when in fact, the best time is probably after things have gone well for maybe longer than they may have should have, before things kind of correct. And so again, just being able to provide our potential clients with a high level understanding that their investments as they currently sit are working as efficiently and effectively as possible to help them reach their goals. And if not, at least making them aware that they may want to consider some changes. We're still not at this point able to give them anything specific, but they can walk out of there saying, hey, I appreciate the hour I've spent today, the half hour I spent last time. You seem like a good advisor. I'm not ready to make that decision, but at least you can walk away with some value, knowing that maybe some changes would be necessary. The alternative is we've finished that hour, you've had all your questions answered, and you really feel at least a little bit comfortable and confident that the person you're sitting across from or talking to over that meeting can be helpful to you. And that's when we're looking to set up an agreement to work together beyond this 1 hour conversation.
I had a question about this kind of 1 hour meeting. So what role does some education play in this?
I would say that the majority of this meeting is purely educational. You're going to get some experience seeing how your numbers work, how your plan may come together. But because it's not complete or finalized or in its more finished form, it's more informative than it is final. And so whether it's one or many of these pain points that you're seeing on the screen now, you're walking out of there with at least some actionable takeaways from an educational standpoint that you can make some adjustments or make some decisions on whether it truly is time for you to hire someone to work for you at this point in time.
Well, we got a good question in here about when do advisors start charging fees and some of the typical fees that advisors charge. That's right where we're getting into. I believe, Brian. So let's go ahead and move on. I will just say in my mind, time commitment. Okay, I've done my research to find an advisor I want to talk to. I don't know how long that'll take, 15 minutes to an hour, whatever. I've talked to the advisor on the phone, so I'm looking at another 30 minutes. Okay, I have to have my next meeting with the advisor. So I've missed binging my show for one night, I think, as far as my time commitment goes. All right, let's talk about our next step.
Sure. And so in our case, we will have not charged anything for this experience up to this point. I can't speak for everybody that's the way they do work. But I still believe that in our case, the reason why we don't is because this is still a feeling out process. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to feel non-committed to making any final decisions until you're at a place where you feel good about it. And so not everybody works that way. I think that's important when you get that referral or when you have that first introductory phone call, that 30-minute version. Most advisors, I would say, probably aren't charging for that very, very first meeting. If they do start to kind of help you with a structural financial plan or give you some specific recommendations, they may charge for that. And so just be aware that it's important if they don't bring it up that you're asking those questions before you do anything. And so we're going to assume that those first two meetings have gone so well that this individual or family has decided to then hire you. And so this is where things can start to deviate in a lot of different ways based on complexity and needs as far as how much time we're going to commit. But I think the whole purpose here is that leading up to this point, we didn't know what we were doing or how long it might take. We've uncovered needs or wants in our financial lives that say this person can then help us. And now it's totally flexible. And so we work around our clients' schedules as far as when they can have phone conversations, when they can meet in person, or when they can meet over a Zoom meeting. And so at this point in time, we will have discussed how we're compensated to work for our clients. We're going to make sure that we're working towards getting all of the relevant accounts that are out there captured, what they look like, where they're at. We're signing documents. In our case, we do 99.9% of all of our documentation electronically at this point. You could be sitting across from me, 2 feet away, and I'm going to send you the email to e-sign your documents. So again, you don't have to do it in that moment. You can do it around your schedule. And so we're under no time constraints once we've reached this point. And the other good news is that, let's say you had a relationship that you maybe weren't in love with. You weren't seeing the value. You weren't getting what you wanted out of that previous relationship. We're able to gather those accounts that we're going to help manage for you and invest for you without you having to call and break up with that advisor. Keeping the dating analogy going, the first day went well, the second day went well. There was someone else in the picture, but you're moving on. And so we're going to help you break up. We're going to go ahead and make all those transfer requests known via a back office request from our office to their office, whoever's custodying the assets. So it's not something that has to be awkward or uncomfortable for you. It's just you're moving on to someone who may be a better fit for you.
So can you talk a little bit about that question that we got in about when they start charging the fees and maybe some of the typical fees that advisors charge?
Sure. There's probably three broad categories the way financial advisors charge fees in today's marketplace. The first and probably the longest standing version is via commission. Commissions can range from anywhere to a few dollars on something to a percentage of the particular product or service that you're looking to use. And that's something that should be disclosed very clearly and at the beginning of the relationship. The next way is via a fee-based relationship. Oftentimes, this is what you'll see. There are no commissions. There are no billable hours if you want to sit down and chat with your advisor, if you want to make changes to your accounts. More often than not, that's a percentage of the assets under care for the advisor. And there's wide ranges there, depending upon the experience, the years of service the advisor may have, the size of the account that you may be working with that advisor on. So there's a ton of variables that go into that, but most importantly, during that second meeting, I've typically been able to get some sense that the potential client is looking to move forward. And I bring it up right before they even have a chance to ask, because I think it's valuable for them to know that, yes, I am a professional. Yes, I do make money. And yes, you will be paying me. I'm not ashamed of that. Just like your doctor isn't ashamed, just like your lawyer wouldn't be ashamed, or your accountant. Any professional that you're working with that has qualifications, that has experience, and is bringing value to the table, they should not be uncomfortable talking to you about what you're going to pay. The last way I'll mention, and this is a little bit more rare in the industry right now, but I am starting to see it a little bit more, is on a more billable hour sense. You'll often see this where someone says, I like managing my own investments. I don't want you to do that part of the work for me. I'd rather you just build me a financial plan, and maybe we review it every so often. And so in that case, an advisor may charge just for that financial planning, or they may have kind of a retainer process where it's we just bill you for this fixed amount, and then if you need our services again in the future, we bill you again. And so those are the three most common. I'm sure there's advisors out there that are creating some other unique compensation models out there that their clients can use, but I would say those three are the most prevalent right now.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm assuming that this step 3 next meeting with the client, it could be a couple meetings, it could be a process where we need to meet. If you're developing a financial plan per se, like what does that process look like? Because this can expand, I'm assuming.
Exactly. This is where, again, I think what's most important is that the advisor understands the client's hobbies, passions, interests, time commitments elsewhere. And the beautiful thing is we have the chance to then structure our time that we need from you around when you have it. And so whether that's, hey, we're going to email you some things we need you to pull together for us. Can you get that done for us in the next 3 days? So it's not something that you have to commit to doing at a specific time during a specific day. We want you to do it at your availability when you most need to. As far as frequency and consistency of follow-up meetings, again, we have certain processes in our office that we know we need to go over, that we want to go over, and we just try to make that element known. that typically after a client decides to come on board, we're going to have another follow-up meeting once all the assets have arrived. We're going to dig into a little bit more of the strategy element of how we're going to invest these funds. What are the risks associated with that? What are the pros? What are the cons? We may talk about products that we're not even using, just so you know in the back of your mind what's out there, and that I'm aware that it's out there, but we're not going to use it, and here's why. So more educational, but again, structuring that around what we're doing, why we're doing it. And again, that can be quick. That can be a pretty brief meeting. If the client is more hands-off, says, hey, I'm hiring you to do this for me. I trust you. Do what you think is best. To the person who's very, very analytical and wants to know the standard deviation of a certain investment product, we can get as high level or as deep in the weeds as each individual or family wants. But again, the structure is based off the time that the consumer wants to spend on these issues, not necessarily us. We're steering it, but we're not forcing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's funny because it reminds me, I got a text yesterday from my financial advisor's office saying, hey, we need to meet for our review. But it's nice because it's not, I've known that we've needed to do it, but I forgot. So they're reminding me.
Absolutely. A good office is committed to consistent follow-up. We understand people are busy. And in our office, one of our office administrators, she's really, really great about continuing to reach out and make sure that it's important that we speak with you, but we're also very respectful of your time and making sure that we want you to know it's important to us, but we're there when you're ready for us as well. All right.
This goes into what we already talked about, but
yeah,
that's okay. You can review that.
Well, and so the point here was the initial phase of that startup is unique to each person and how complicated their situation may be. They may have 4 old 401ks. They got 3 different IRAs, one at 2 different institutions. They have a really complex financial planning need. And so this can all take a lot of time to get up and running, or it can be done in, a week and everything's good to go. The most important thing to us and our practice is that our clients know that this is not a one and done. We've got everything. We're taking care of it. We'll see you at your retirement. It is a chance that we're going to consistently and regularly have strategy and tactical review meetings. Again, the time commitment varies again based on each individual, but typically we're carving out an hour once every 3 to 12 months, depending upon circumstances, to get together with clients. More frequent meetings are typically needed in or around those life events because you don't get to redo a retirement. And so we really want to make sure we're on the same page, that anything you're concerned about has been addressed fully and thoroughly. But we also let the client dictate to us what they expect. We have a pretty hard and fast rule that no one goes more than 12 months. And so that goes back to the FIT meeting. We've already discussed that in our FIT meeting, that if you're saying, hey, I'll see you again in 5 years, we're not going to be winding up working together, because we need some commitment that this is important to you. And once every 12 months seems very reasonable to us, as far as a lot can change in 12 months. And so we want to make sure we're getting together again. We're learning about what has changed. Maybe that's something financially has changed between now and the last time we got together, or maybe it's their goal has changed. They saw something on TV that talked about beach houses in Florida, and they got this idea in their head. They're like, we may want to spend some of our retirement in Florida. What could that look like? How do we do that? We want to buy a place. What are the steps we should be taking today to be able to make that a reality when we're ready to retire? So it's those triggering events that we talk about that may have changed in their lives, or the goals may have changed. And then we're also spending this time digging a little bit deeper into the financial plan. We've had this high level structure, but this is where we really need to dig in and say, okay, how much is Social Security going to play a role in this, or a pension? How much would caring for kids or grandkids, or helping them, or what if there's a medical event later in life that requires some expenses? Are there any risks out there that could derail your financial plan, that would require a conversation around, does it make sense to purchase some type of protection around that? But at least identifying what those may be. So there's a lot of depth that a good financial planner is going to go into. It's not just you have this much money today, you're going to have this much money in the future. And that seems like it should be enough. There's also going to be a lot of situations that may or may not happen, but we need to talk about those so that we're prepared. It's a terrible analogy, but it's one I use often. When times are going well, if you're on a flight and the airplane is on autopilot, you're typically not too worried. But if the engine goes out, that pilot, you want him in your cockpit, making sure he's there to take over should that be necessary. So that's your financial planner in this case. But you also want to make sure that he has his emergency checklist already figured out. And so we don't want to wait until something bad happens or something goes wrong to discuss and talk about what those things may be and the impacts that it has on our clients. And so that's the detail. That's the point of these regular strategy and tactical review meetings. It's we may not buy anything, we may not make any changes. It just may be let's hypothetically go down a path and see and talk about, if that were to happen to us, how would we handle that?
It's funny because when you talk about time, and once you get to the point where you have a relationship, it doesn't feel like the time crunch is as important once you have that established relationship. I just think about like the professionals that I already work with, my doctor and my attorney and things like that. Yeah, I may not want to I want to carve out that time, but I know it's important. And the anxiety level of it brings my anxiety down knowing that like I've met with them, I have a relationship, I can trust them with this aspects of my life. And I feel like that's a good it's a good relationship. Like I'll trade my nervousness for like an hour of time with a professional.
I couldn't agree more. My goal with every client, anytime I'm spending time with them, whether that's over the phone, in person, on a Zoom, is that they walk out of that time that they just invested, because time is money, money's invested, that they walk out of there feeling like it was worth their time. They're paying me to serve them, to work for them. And the last thing I want to do is them feel like I'm paying this guy and now I'm also wasting my time with him. If they're not getting value out of that time, then I'm letting them down. So I joke with my clients that, I'm not going to call you randomly on a Tuesday afternoon just to see how your cat is doing. That's not adding value to your time. I do care how your cat is doing, but as your professional, your financial professional, that's not going to add value to you. You'd letting me know how your cat is. However, if there's a problem that we need to address, if there's a change that we need to make, I will be reaching out to you, and knowing that the little bit of time it's going to take to have that conversation, it's moving you closer to your end goals and objectives.
All right. Well, we have some time to take some questions now. So if you have a question and you haven't had a chance to put it in the chat, go ahead and do that now. I have a list that I've already gathered, and we'll try to get through as many of these as possible. Brian, here's a good question. What about relationships with other professionals? How can your advisor help you, like with other say tax or law or something, or insurance professionals? Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. This is critical. In our practice, what we kind of think about is picture like a bicycle wheel, where in the center of this wheel is you, the client. And the idea is you need to surround yourself with these spokes that are other professionals. And this should be all encompassed in one ring. And all of those professionals should be aware of, and in really ideal circumstances, actually have relationships with, so that all of your professionals are communicating. And so early in my career, I spent a lot of time getting to know as many of the tax professionals in my city as possible, because I knew my clients were working with these folks, and I wanted them to know who I was, so that if there was a chance that in the course of my conversation with my clients and something came up, I'm not allowed to give tax advice and I'm not allowed to prepare tax returns. As a CFP, though, we spend a lot of time in our education learning about taxes. I mean, to the depth that I could do a tax return, I don't want to. I'm not going to take my time away from doing that. It speaks to a greater point that if your professional wears a lot of different hats, maybe they're an insurance agent, a tax accountant, and a financial advisor, you should be wondering kind of where they're at each day. But that's not to be said. The point there is, once you've decided that you need professionals in your life, be the hub, surround yourself with the spokes. I make the effort to actually ask my clients, who does your taxes? Have you done an estate plan or will or trust, and who did you do it with? Who handles your property and casualty insurance? I take the effort to say, is it okay with you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, if I reach out to introduce myself to those folks so that they know who I am, should anything in their line of work cross over with my line of work, that we have an open line of communication. So that's kind of, to me, the most, that is the ideal situation. It may or may not be practical. You may have an account that you use from when you lived in Ohio, your financial advisors in Florida, and your account, they could all just be really, really far apart. That doesn't mean you can't have an email introduction to say, hey, here's my professionals. I want to introduce all of you to everybody, just so that everyone knows everyone, should anything come up, knowing that we can at least send an email and still have some line of communication.
All right. Talking about taxes, what sort of role does taxes play in making your financial plan?
It's huge. And I don't want to make it sound like it's really extreme, but it is really, really valuable to consider. The conversations that I typically have with my clients, I think it goes without saying that most people don't enjoy paying taxes. They probably realize that they owe a fair share, and they understand that. However, if there are ways to avoid, delay, or reduce how much they're paying in taxes, those are conversations that a financial advisor can be having. Again, the in an ideal situation, that advisor's communicating with the accountant to make sure that their ideas and what the accountant is prepared and knowledgeable about doing makes sense. But the understanding there is that we account for the drag that taxes play on our ultimate returns. I'll give you one just real quick example. Met with a new prospective client here recently. They had a non-retirement account, commonly referred to as a brokerage account. It's a joint account in their case. And the investment products that their previous advisor was using lacked tax efficiency. There was a unnecessary drag happening within this client's portfolio that was harming them essentially as it relates to their net return. And so the last thing we want is to pay more than our fair share. And so as it relates to whether you put money into a 401k, a Roth IRA, an annuity, all these different types of either account types or products that exist in this world that we live in, making sure we understand the tax benefits and also the tax deficiencies that may exist, and just knowing that good financial planning, good asset management, it's a non-negotiable. You have to be accounting for the tax implications of all of the decisions you're making along the way.
All right, I've got a couple more questions here, and then we'll go ahead and close out. You talked about a CFP. Can you explain what that is?
Absolutely. So CFP stands for Certified Financial Planner. It is a governing body that was formed many, many years ago to take the world of financial advisors and try and differentiate them based on a higher standard, a higher level of education, and a commitment to treating and caring for their clients in a certain way. At the baseline level, anyone who holds himself out to be a financial advisor typically is going to have what's known as a Series 7 securities license. That is kind of the minimum threshold to be able to invest clients' monies in stocks, bonds, ETFs, and other products that on their behalf. There are probably a couple 100,000, maybe 300,000 or so financial advisors out there, but there's probably less than 10,000 certified financial planners. And so that doesn't guarantee that you're getting a great advisor. That doesn't guarantee that this person is better than a non-CFP charter member. All it means is that this person has made a commitment and a dedication to understanding the profession at a level that's deeper than what that Series 7 license would require someone to have. It covers things like estate planning, tax, insurance, protection. And so there's just a lot more to getting your CFP than just having a securities license. And so that to me is the differentiator, that at least you know this person has spent the time, and it does take quite a bit of time, anywhere from, I don't know, 6 months to 2 years in some cases to be able to go through the curriculum required to do that. There's also a years of service requirement to even be able to apply for a CFP designation. There's a test, a comprehensive test. And so you need at least 3 years of industry experience. You need to pass a full-blown comprehensive test at the end of your curriculum to be able to hold yourself out as a CFP. There's ongoing education that's required. There's membership dues that are required. So anyone who's out there as a CFP is very committed to the ongoing education, the ongoing commitment to being a part of that more select group to try and at least from afar, when someone is looking up your credentials, say, okay, I can at least have a little more confidence that this person may have done a little more time, effort, and energy into their profession than just the random average advisor you may come across.
All right. And then a final question before we end out here. How do I know if I'm with the wrong type of advisor?
That's hard. Because when in my case, everyone I'm working with, I think is happy with me. I would put it this way. If you're getting that proactive contact from your advisor and you're doing everything you can to avoid it, if the thought of spending time working on your financial plan and your investments is so negative in your mind that you are trying to avoid it, that's probably a sign that you're with the wrong advisor. An advisor that's not clearly setting and defining the expectations. On any given year, my clients have the same opportunity to have negative returns as anybody else. I am not immune to the markets. However, if the expectation was set that you'll never lose money, that's a problem. And so if you don't know what to expect, you're not getting what you think you should be getting from your advisor, or the thought of seeing your advisor gives you the willies, it's probably time to seek out someone else. It's a tough one, but I think if you're asking the question, you probably already know the answer.
Well, we'll end with that question. And I want to thank Brian for being here and for the organizations that have made this webinar possible today. To our attendees, look for an email soon with a link to the replay of this event. And you're welcome to share that replay with friends and family. Here at Advice Chaser, we're all about helping you find a financial advisor who's a great fit for your life and your financial questions. Every one of our advisor partners has committed to offer a free initial consultation to anyone we introduce them to. Find out more by going to advicechaser.com and clicking on the link to find an advisor. Well, folks, thank you so much for coming, and we hope to see you at another webinar soon. Goodbye and have a great day.